In August 1485, the decades-long bloodletting of the Wars of the Roses finally stopped. King Richard III lay dead on the battlefield at Bosworth, and the 29-year-old victor, Henry Tudor, claimed the English crown. To secure the peace, Henry had pledged to marry the 20-year-old Yorkist heir, Elizabeth of York. The union would fuse their warring houses and stabilize the country. But Henry had a massive genealogical problem. His father possessed zero English royal blood. His mother descended from a Lancastrian line that had been explicitly, legally excluded from the line of succession. Elizabeth had the opposite problem. She possessed the ultimate royal claim by blood. However, her uncle, Richard III, had previously pushed an act through Parliament declaring her and her siblings legally illegitimate. You have a king with a weak bloodline, and an heir stripped of her legal standing. Neither holds unquestionable royal authority on paper. To rule securely, they would have to manufacture it out of thin air. Henry had won the throne partly because of his promise to marry Elizabeth. Yet after his victory, he intentionally delayed the wedding for nearly 5 months. An old rumor suggests Henry was waiting to see if Elizabeth was pregnant with her uncle Richard's child. There is zero contemporary evidence to support this. The delay was highly strategic. First, Henry required his initial parliament to officially recognize him as king. He needed this legislation passed before he married the Yorkist heir. This established his rule by right of conquest. Henry had to prove his kingship was won on the battlefield by his own hand, rather than inherited through his future wife. If a king relies solely on his wife's bloodline to justify his rule, her political supporters can use that exact same logic to legally depose him. Henry ensured his power stood entirely on its own. Once his kingship was secured, he faced the next major hurdle. Elizabeth was still legally a bastard. Henry had to undo Richard III's Titulus Regius, the official act that had stripped her status. To make Elizabeth his queen, Parliament had to repeal the act. But standard parliamentary procedure required reading the entire text of the bill aloud, which would enter the scandalous details of her supposed illegitimacy into the permanent public record. Henry bypassed the rules. He allowed only the first 14 lines to be read aloud, stopped the proceedings, and simply declared the act reversed. He then ordered every physical copy of the Titulus Regius to be handed in and formally destroyed, attempting to wipe the claims from history entirely. He almost succeeded, but Bishop John Russell secretly tucked a single original copy of the text inside the records of Croyland Abbey, preserving the details for modern historians. After navigating a deadly plague outbreak in London, and securing a papal dispensation for their shared bloodlines, the couple finally married at Westminster Abbey on January 18, 1486. Through this deliberate sequence of military force, administrative delays, and aggressive legal redaction, a vulnerable exile and a disinherited princess constructed an undeniable claim to the English throne. The engineered union proved highly successful. Henry and Elizabeth formed an affectionate partnership, raising 4 surviving children before Elizabeth died on her 37th birthday. But their effort to curate their royal image didn't end with their lives. You can still see the physical evidence of this operation today at Westminster Abbey. Henry spent massive sums to build the Abbey's Lady Chapel, an architectural marvel with an intricate fan-vaulted roof, designed specifically to house their legacy. They were the first English monarchs to be buried in a vault underneath the floor, rather than in a traditional tomb chest above ground, covered by a Renaissance monument crafted by Pietro Torrigiano. Yet, if you look past the gilt bronze and black marble, the Abbey collections hold artifacts that reveal the fragile reality behind the royal facade, their surviving funeral effigies. The body of Henry's effigy was simply wood, canvas, and hay, but the plaster face is striking and lifelike, believed by historians to be cast from his actual death mask. Elizabeth's effigy head was carried during her own funeral procession, originally attached to a body made of leather stuffed with hay. Beneath the staggering wealth of their monuments and the brilliant legal fictions they wrote into law, they were simply 2 vulnerable people navigating a brutal political landscape. Together, they engineered legitimacy out of nothing and built the Tudor Dynasty.